Good evening, everybody. It is rare that I write my opening monologue ahead of time. Equal still, it's even more rare that I write it ahead of time and pre-record it. But this one's too important. And I want to make sure that I get this one right without failing to remember a single thing. As such, I say it doesn't take much of a fool to realize just how much vitriol there is out there these days, from Maine to Hawaii, over the conditions our nation are facing, and the status of our nation's leadership. One would only need to watch this show to see it firsthand, and one should easily be able to ascertain that it's just not me into some of this political vitriol. Without being overly frank and without needing to name names, this vitriol was seen when unemployment benefits were held hostage in the month of June 2010. It was seen when Omabacare went from being a bill into law. It was seen when names such as Barney Frank, Charlie Rangel, Sarah Palin, John McCain, Nancy Pelosi, or George W. Bush were mentioned in discussion, among a few other names, of course. Perhaps the great thing about political vitriol is that here on Shovio, some of us who were, at one point, beyond control, have drawn a truce, and we don't take political discussions to levels anymore that made others feel very, very uncomfortable. This just isn't the case in Washington. And we saw that vitriol turn into blood on Sunday with the shooting of 8 people, the murders of 5, and the unfortunate carnage that has hurt U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords of Arizona. There is, it is important to say, no proof whatsoever that political vitriol is what caused the shootings there. But it's a tragedy that hasn't got this much media coverage since September 11th, 2001. But when a suspect writes himself a note that says, "Kill Gabrielle Giffords," one would be a fool not to admit there's a good likelihood that negative politics of the last few years had something to do with his reasons behind killing or trying to kill her. Just what did that vitriol look like over the last few years? Take a look at this video.
Hi, Chris. Well, as you say, it's important to point out we don't know what the motive was in this case. And as Pete Williams was reporting just a short time ago, it does appear that the suspect had some displeasure with the Congresswoman, whether it was personal, whether it was political. We just don't know at this point. But as you say, it has sparked this conversation about the state of the political discourse in this country, with some warning that if the extremes on both sides aren't reined in, that this very well could happen again.
As the picture of the troubled suspect emerges, the 22-year-old seems barely old enough to be so angry at the government.
This man is trampling on my rights.
But just listen to this country's political discourse of late.
How about the illegal alien?
The sheriff in Arizona says that could have been fuel enough.
To try to inflame the public on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, has impact on people, especially who are unbalanced personalities to begin with.
At a time when interrupting the president with an insult is now a reality, and a once quiet House gallery has become a place of protest, political civility, some say, is being torn apart from the edges.
No government health care.
We have to be careful not to blame one side or the other, because both sides are guilty of this. You have extremes on both sides.
Not since Timothy McVeigh attacked the federal building in Oklahoma City has a crime sparked so much attention on anti-government rhetoric. That map Sarah Palin put up on Facebook last year, targeting Congresswoman Giffords' seat, made Gifford nervous even then.
The crosshairs of a gun site over our district. And when people do that, they've got to realize there's consequences to that action.
Consequences that some charge have been lost as all the vitriol bounces around the echo chamber that's become cable TV and the internet. Discord that most of us would pass off as simply silly may be taken far differently by those already unhinged.
I care, you care, we...
And that's what worries the sheriff as much as anything.
Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to find reasonable, decent people who are willing to subject themselves to serve in public office.
We survived tumultuous political environments before. Some say this latest crime is democracy's latest test.
Now, Chris, as you've been reporting all morning, the suspect is due in court in a little more than 4 hours from now. We may get a few more answers as to the question of why this tragedy happened, but given what reports say in terms of his cooperating with officials, don't expect to hear a whole lot from the suspect himself. Chris?
Regardless of whether the political nonsense of America triggered the subjects to commit these most heinous crimes, it should be a lot clearer right now that any kind of divisiveness in the United States of America is unacceptable to all Americans. I'm fed up with it, and I sure hope that you're fed up with it today. Today, yesterday, and tomorrow, U.S. Congress will be a united body of government, just as they were on September 11th, 2001. But we all know just how long that lasted. Maybe this time when we see John Boehner and Harry Reid side by side, or when we see Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell standing side by side, we can be confident they're doing it for the right reasons and for the betterment of the people of the United States of America. We should be confident that the hatred across this country could come to an end because, after all, the political vitriol we've seen before was mostly prompted by Americans who saw it from their politicians. Maybe, just maybe, this will all come to an end on the heels of the shooting of a member of Congress. Maybe I'm confident all of this will finally change. Maybe I'm just living in a fantasy land.